Whether you're just trying to wholesale some apartments, whether you're trying to flip some, or whether you're trying to buy and hold some larger ones. This course is gonna go over everything in multifamily in depth. First, let's start off with what is multifamily. Technically, multifamily is anything that is 5 units or higher. So a duplex, a triplex, a 4-unit, those don't really count. They're not valued the same way as a multifamily is, which is 5 or more units. Now, there's no limit. It could be up to 1,000 units, 10,000 units. There's no maximum number for multifamily. Also, multifamily is normally its own asset class code on the county appraisal district. For example, in Texas, the class code for multifamily apartments is B1. Single family is A1 and commercial is F1. So it's kind of designated on its own. And a duplex, triplex, fourplex in Texas is a B2, B3, B4, but it's not a B1 because a B1 is a true 5+ multifamily. So the difference between single family and multifamily is really how they're valued. So a single family home and even a duplex and triplex is valued on comps, on sales comps, which I'm sure you're aware of. You look up a similar sized house, similar condition, and see what it's sold for, and that's what your home is worth. While in multifamily, there's value based on the income it brings in. One 12-unit apartment complex across the street from another 12-unit apartment complex can be 2 totally different prices. The one across the street might have better amenities, might be just better well kept, better managed, there's less expenses, and the rents could even be the same, but the one with the less expenses will be valued higher because it's bringing more income. We'll dig into this later, but just keep in mind that's how it's valued. It's valued based on the income. You're not fighting or comparing yourself to other properties. You're just trying to make your own property worth as much as it can be by upping your income. Now, in terms of benefits as well, there's a lot of benefits to multifamily versus single family. In single family, you have one tenant. If they move out, you're screwed. In multifamily, if you have a tenant or 2 move out, you're still getting income and more than enough really to cover your mortgage, your expenses, everything, and still make profit, even if you have some vacancies. So there's a lot more protection when it comes to multifamily. Also, the tax benefits are different. For a larger multifamily, you can do something called a cost segregation and bonus depreciation, and that gives you a lot more tax advantages than a standard single family rental can. Also, for financing, the multifamily, especially the ones with over 1 million in loan amount, can get much better rates and much better terms than banks or credit unions trying to finance a single family house. I mean, it's like night and day difference. And they only base it off your experience and the asset itself. A lot of single family, even credit unions and banks still rely on your income if you have a day job or not. If you don't have a day job, it's really hard to get a loan on these single family properties, while for multifamily, they don't really look at that. Now let's talk about the difference between small multifamily and large multifamily. In this course, we're gonna focus on targeting the small multifamily because I think that's the best way for a beginner to get a real good deal. So I consider small multifamily anything from 8 to 50 units, in that range. Anything above 50 units, it's very hard to find a mom and pop motivated seller. They're just more sophisticated, they're smarter, they're not gonna sell at a huge discount. So small multifamily, it's easier to find a mom and pop owner that's not managing it properly. This is where you can come in and do a value add and make the money. And it's also less competition for these smaller multifamilies. It's also less competition. All these big syndicators, big investors, they want 100 units or more. They're not really looking at the 8 to 50 unit range. And then most other investors that are just investing in single family or duplexes aren't gonna look at a 12 to 30, 40, 50 unit because they think it's too much work, it's too big for them, who knows. So this is kind of a little niche where you can really carve out and make a lot of money. So we're gonna have to go over terminology. The first step is education, right? And in multifamily, there's a whole lot of special terminology you need to learn to be able to comprehend, analyze, and discuss these deals with people. I've created a spreadsheet below that kind of is like a dictionary going over all the multifamily terms you need to know. It's way too long for me to explain it over the video, so please download it and read through it and learn it. But the main ones you need to learn is the asset classes, class A, B, C, and D, cap rate, NOI, pro forma, rent roll, P&L, T12, cash on cash return, IRR, stuff like that. Those are kind of the big ones you're gonna look at, but you can find all that in this dictionary below that I created and just study that, memorize that, learn that, practice with the words. It's gonna be needed, I'm telling you now. So I'll put a free training below on showing how I underwrite and analyze. It's exactly how I mitigate my risk and maximize my upside for maximum profit potential. And if you want to actually work with me on bigger deals like the one I'm talking about in today's video, you can also apply for that there too. Now, one terminology item I will go over real quick is the classifications. There's class A, B, C, and D. So A is kind of the best and D is kind of the worst, kind of like school grades, right? So there's two categories. The asset, the building itself is graded, and then the location is graded. And then that's combined into one overall grade for the whole property. A class A asset is maybe a newer built building within the last 5 years. Top of the line amenities, top of the line construction, high-end finishes, a luxury feel, has everything from pools to gym to all the amenities you need in an apartment complex. A class B asset is something that's a little older, maybe 10 to 15 years old. Doesn't have any major repairs that it needs right away. It can maybe use some cosmetic updates. It's a overall decent property. It's got some amenities, decent rents, right? It's not gonna get the same rents as high as a class A, but it's still pretty good. Class C is an older property, normally 20 plus years older, 25, 30 years old. It's gonna have maybe some deferred maintenance, maybe very old AC units, but you gotta replace them as they go out. It's not gonna have as many amenities. It's gonna be uglier finishes inside, not luxury. That's kind of a class C asset. A class D asset is more like it's very old and needs major capital expenditures. Major capex, major rehab, new roofs, it got fire damage, it needs all new plumbing, electrical, it's dilapidated, foundations are all off. That's what I consider a class D building asset. Now, if we go to location wise, a class A location is like a very prime part of town or city, right in the heart of downtown, right by a major sports venue, right by the most desirable place to live, one of the richest neighborhoods, close to all the best shopping, restaurants, dining, the best areas of town, right? That's class A location. A class B location is like a pretty good location, very safe still. It's gonna be close to restaurants, shopping, stuff you wanna do, but it's not right in the heart of what's popping. A class C location is further away, I would say. It's okay crime rate, not too bad. Schools are okay, not the best, but it's still a quiet area. You can live there, work, that kind of thing. A class D area is when I would consider like a war zone, like really ghetto, high crime, not a desirable place to live, kind of thing. You can also actually physically put categorizations on these assets based off median household income, which is just how much the average household in that area makes per year, crime rate, and also your school rankings. Greatschools.org is a site that ranks all the public schools in the country, and it updates its rankings every year. So a class A area would probably have a median household income of 6 figures, right? The average household in that area is making 6 figures plus. The crime rate's gonna be very low, and the school district is gonna be very good. When I mean very good, on greatschools.org, you put in that address, the elementary school, the middle school, and the high school will be 8, 9, or 10, each one of them. And it'll average out to 8 or higher. And that's only the public schools. We're not looking at the private schools, we're not looking at charter schools, public schools. A class B asset, I would say, is like a median household income from $60,000 to $90,000. Their crime rate's pretty low still, nothing crazy. The school district won't be as good. It'll be good, but it won't be the best. You'll probably get great school ratings of 6 or 7 on the schools. That's kind of a class B area to me. A class C area is gonna have moderate crime rate. The median household income of the area might be around 40K to 60K. And the great school ratings will average probably about a 4. Anything that's like a 4 or 5 is gonna be a great school rating for a class B area. Now, Class D area is, I would say, anything under $35,000 a year, median household income. It's gonna have high crime rates, and it's also going to have the worst schools, 1 or 2 or 3 on greatschools.org. So that's an overview of how to identify if a property is Class A, B, C, or D. And what you would do is you take the location class and the building class and just average it out. So if you have a Class C building, but a Class A area, you can just say, oh, it's about a Class B property, because you're averaging out the building and the location to Class B. Next, let's talk about picking a market to invest in. The first market you always want to choose is the one right in your own backyard. It's going to be the easiest, it's going to be the best way to learn. You know the neighborhoods, you know the area. It's the safest and best way to get your foot in. Now, if you live in a market where that's not possible, like San Francisco, downtown New York, Manhattan, Brickell, Miami, then yeah, maybe you need to look at more affordable markets where you can do this strategy. I like markets that have job growth and population growth, because those two factors are kind of the reason why prices will keep going up. When there's more demand for housing and more people come, prices go up. So what's going on right now is mainly the south of the United States, the Sun Belt region, if you want to call it, is kind of where all that growth is. All the way from Arizona through Texas, all the way to Florida. That's kind of where everything is growing. I mean, the whole United States market has been hot the past several years, but you want to focus on the states with growth. I'm not saying there's not deals in Michigan or other parts of town, but you have to find the right niche, right? The right town, the right city. Maybe a suburb of Detroit is hot and growing, but not downtown Detroit, right? So just know your market, but if you want to go out of your own market, I would prefer going to the Sun Belt states. I think that's the best bet, the safest bet. Now, the next thing I look at is median household income. What that signifies is that helps you determine if it's a Class A, B, or C, or D area. And that's also combined with the school district. So the better the schools, or the higher the median household income, the better the area. And that's what I like. The worst school districts, say it's a 1, 2, or 3 on greatschools.org, and the median household income is maybe only $30,000, then it's probably a Class D area and I won't invest in it. It's all up to you. Some people love the Class D areas. They think it's amazing cash flow because you can get it for so cheap. I personally would rather have it headache-free, and I target B or C areas. Really, A or B areas. I don't even touch C areas, but I'm trying to find an asset that's a C or B asset that needs renovations or repairs to turn it into a B property or A property. Now, if you didn't study the class codes in the dictionary, Class A just means kind of the best properties, the best location. Class B is a good property in a good location. Class C is an older property, probably needs some work in an okay location. And Class D is either a property that's a lot of damage and major repairs, or just in a very poor, very bad location, high crime, bad schools, low median household income, that kind of thing. So I focus on value add. I focus on C assets in A or B locations. Next, let's talk about picking a market to invest in. The first market you always want to choose is the one right in your own backyard. It's going to be the easiest, it's going to be the best way to learn. You know the neighborhoods, you know the area. It's the safest and best way to get your foot in. Now, if you live in a market where that's not possible, like San Francisco, downtown New York, Manhattan, Brickell, Miami, then yeah, maybe you need to look at more affordable markets where you can do this strategy. I like markets that have job growth and population growth, because those two factors are kind of the reason why prices will keep going up. When there's more demand for housing and more people come, prices go up. So what's going on right now is mainly the south of the United States, the Sun Belt region, if you want to call it, is kind of where all that growth is. All the way from Arizona through Texas, all the way to Florida. That's kind of where everything is growing. I mean, the whole United States market has been hot the past several years, but you want to focus on the states with growth. I'm not saying there's not deals in Michigan or other parts of town, but you have to find the right niche, right? The right town, the right city. Maybe a suburb of Detroit is hot and growing, but not downtown Detroit, right? So just know your market, But if you want to go out of your own market, I would prefer going to the Sun Belt states. I think that's the best bet, the safest bet. Now, the next thing I look at is median household income. What that signifies is that helps you determine if it's a class A, B, or C, or D area. And that's also combined with the school district. So the better the schools, or the higher the median household income, the better the area. And that's what I like. The worst school districts, say it's a 1, 2, or 3 on greatschools.org, and the median household income is maybe only $30,000, then that's probably a class D area and I won't invest in it. It's all up to you. Some people love the class D areas. They think it's amazing cash flow because you can get it for so cheap. I personally would rather have it headache free, and I target B or C areas. Really A or B areas. I don't even touch C areas by trying to find an asset that's a C or B asset that needs renovations or repairs to turn it into a B property or A property. Now, if you didn't study the class codes in the dictionary, Class A just means the kind of the best properties, the best location. Class B is a good property in a good location. Class C is an older property, probably needs some work in an okay location. And Class D is either a property that's a lot of damage and major repairs, or just in a very poor, very bad location, high crime, bad schools, low median household income, that kind of thing. So I focus on value add. I focus on C assets in A or B locations. Next, we're going to talk about where do you find the deals. So you can find deals on market listed by a broker, whether that's LoopNet or brokerage websites, or you can do it the off-market way, which means you would have to target sellers doing the same methods you would do if you're wholesaling or targeting an off-market single-family property. You can get that off lists like the eviction list, the tax delinquent list, or you can go pay services like CoStar or Reonomy, where they can aggregate that data for you to make it simpler to download. So if you want to look at brokerages, there's about 5 or so major brokerages for multifamily. Those include CBRE, Newmark Knight Frank, Marcus and Millichap, Berkadia, JLL, and then normally your local market will have smaller local brokerages. For example, here in Houston, we have Houston Income Properties, KET, and Transwestern as well. So you want to look at them. You can go to the websites, they'll have deals listed for your area. They're more national brokers. Or you can go on LoopNet and find the brokers that way. You can see their listings on LoopNet under multifamily. If you're gonna go the broker route, you have to build relationships with these brokers. It's gonna take time. You're not gonna get a home run deal the first deal you buy from them. But if you continue building the relationship, eventually they'll give you their off-market deals. So what does that look like? It means whenever they send you something to look at, underwrite it and respond back with reasons why this deal doesn't work for you. Some kind of feedback. Don't just ignore them. Always respond back within 48 hours, maybe 24 hours if possible. Be like, hey, thank you for sending me this deal, but I'm concerned about the roofs, I'm concerned about this, the rents might not get that. I don't think I can be where you're asking, but if I had to offer, I would be at this. This way, you show that you're serious to the broker. You're gonna show them, hey, I'm actually looking at the stuff you're sending me. I'm not a tire kicker. I wanna buy something, but it has to make sense for me. Now, like I said, those off-market pocket deals, they only save those for their VIP clients, and you have to kind of work your way into being that VIP client. It's a very relationship-based business, and it's gonna take time. It's gonna take years. So don't go into it thinking the broker's gonna send you their best deals, because they're not. They've sent it to other people before. At the end of the day, they're still trying to help the seller sell the property. So in this video, I'm gonna go over how to find deals listed by brokers. Like I mentioned, there's several main nationwide brokerages, and then there's gonna be individual ones local to your market. The first one we're looking at is Berkadia. If you go to Berkadia, multifamily and properties for sale, this is what you'll see. You can also filter out the property types. Do you want multifamily, hotels, senior housing, student housing, land, etc. If we just want to do multifamily, we'll just check that, click submit. And then you also want to check if you want core, core plus, value add, or opportunistic. So if you just take a look right here, you can see all the multifamily properties they have listed for sale, or you can go on the map view if you want to see. So I want to see what's available in Houston. You can scroll into Houston and you can see they have some properties listed. They have one right here. Metro Greenway, it's a multifamily property, 309 units, built in 2008. It's a value add. Well, this one's sold. So you can see, well, this one's sold. Active. So this one, Normandy Woods, is listed for sale, active for sale. This one was sold. Derby at Steeplechase. Boulevard at Deer Park was sold. The Reserve at Baybrook is active. So we can look at this one. So it has photos of the property. It's a nice Class A property. It gives you a little information. It's a 291 unit, mid-rise. It's right next to Baybrook Mall in Southeast Houston. So this is the address in Friendswood. It's always going to say market price. They never will give you the actual price of the property. It's going to be market price. Just because it says all cash, that just means the loan is not assumable, or you can't take over the existing loan. You have to get a new loan or pay of cash. So it's brand new built, 2022, 291 units. Average rent gives you all the basics, right? Average rent is $18.18, and then it gives you some information about the property, on the lease ups, the income, the market itself, Baybrook area, Friendswood area. Then it gives you a outlook. So this is a whole mall right here, this Baybrook Mall, and there's a Sam's Club, and then there's some hospitals over here, and then the apartments are right here, and there's a Lifetime Fitness. So this is really close to everything. Target, grocery store, H-E-B, Best Buy, Lowe's, University of Houston's over here. So this is a really good location. And it shows pictures of the property. Yeah, beautiful property, nice property, Class A property. More on the apartments in the community right here. And that's kind of all the basics. And then if you want to contact one of the brokers, they have all the marketing brokers here you can contact if you want more information. And then you go to Doc Center. Doc Center is where you have all the documents like the P&L, the rent rolls, etc. You're going to have to create an account with these websites, and you're going to sign a confidentiality agreement. So once you do all that, then you can actually access the documents for the property. See, they have the offering memorandum, which is kind of what we just saw on the website, but this is more detailed in a PDF form. We can look at the rent roll. Tells you the rent, same thing as rent roll. Basically, tenant, unit, the rent, deposit, when they moved in, when they move out, the balance they currently owe, etc. Don't know what the highlighted one means. Maybe they're about to move out or being evicted, not sure. And then we download the P&L so we can actually see what the property's actually doing. So the last 12 months has pulled in $744,000 in gross income, but their expenses are at $480,000 essentially, which is very high. So your net operating income is only $264,000. Now that's very high, as the expenses should be about 50%. In this case, it's more like 60%, 70% expenses. So we can have to dig in and see what is really costing a lot of money. So we have repairs at $55,000. That seems very high. So we see in the month of April, they had a $38,000 repair bill in April. Well, every other month was only like not as much. So I don't know what went on in April. We have to ask the broker about that. HVAC, appliances, what's this one? Materials purchased was also super high, $53,000. So unless they're doing like some improvements and like renovations, otherwise I don't see how it could be that expensive for the property. So they have a management fee of $60K, and they have payroll expense of $101,000. That seems very high for a 60-unit apartment complex. Yeah, it's only 60 units. You should not be paying $100K in payroll salary at all. So if something's not right here, and that's a value add opportunity, maybe you can fire the on-site management and go with third party, off-site, or something, because normally 60 units is not big enough to cover on-site property management. So that's why it's really killing their NOI, because they're paying for on-site property management on such a small property, where it only makes sense when it's about 90 units or more. Let's see what else is going on. Taxes are going to kill you in Texas. Water and sewer. So the water bill is super high, $64,000. But they're charging back the tenants a good chunk of it. They're getting about $49,000 back. So not bad, not bad. Trash. Yeah, so everything else looks good. It just seems like they have a super high management payroll expense and management fee, and then some really high repairs and materials. I don't know what happened in that month of April. So the expenses are very high. So it's either being mismanaged or there's something going on where it's costing them a lot of money to run and manage the property. And that's a value add opportunity where you can mitigate expenses instead of actually focusing on increasing rent. You can focus on cutting down the expenses. You can probably get another $100,000 or so in NOI off the bat just from operating it better. So as you can see, you get a lot of information when you're looking at these broker deals. That makes it pretty easy to underwrite because you just plug and play into the deal analyzer. Transwestern's another big brokerage with a bunch of commercial properties. I'm not gonna go through every one. Newmark Knight Frank. Let's go to multifamily. It's another one if you want to look at multifamily properties. So this one you can actually search by city and state. If I just want to look in Texas, and you go to map view and see all the properties for sale. But let's go to list view for now. As you see, they have quite a few in Houston. Avenir at Milan, 360 units. Alexa Memorial for 356 units. They have these two, 180 units. Bunch of properties in Houston, right? Apex Oaks, McKinney, Texas. So you have a huge variety from anywhere from 41 units in the middle of nowhere, Texas, to something that's 1,000 units. From, older 1960s garden style apartments to newly built Class A luxury apartments like these right here, the Everly in Houston. And then you just click learn more. As you can see, it's a really nice apartment complex. Same thing, they give you kind of the offering, give you a quick summary. 387 units, built in 2017. Currently 95% occupied, some photos, the location, and then the broker contacts, Zach Springer, Russell Jones. And then if you want, you can get the contact them for more information, like the docs and stuff. But that's kind of the same thing, right? And then if we go to JLL, it's another big brokerage that's nationwide. You can see the listings all here. And then in Houston, we have two smaller brokerages. We have Houston Income Properties and KET. And they only focus in the Houston mainly area. And you can see they have some smaller deals here. 45 unit at Montrose, 11 unit here, 61 unit here. Some smaller apartments. They do have big ones too as well. Like this one's 240 units, 232. So they do have that as well. Houston Income Properties, same thing. Go to opportunities, investment opportunities, and you'll see what they have listed. They have something in Beaumont, Texas, 256 units here in Houston, 232 units here. And it's all going to be kind of the same thing. You click on it, kind of get the information that you need, and then you can contact the broker when you submit an LOI or make an offer. They'll have pictures of the property, the summary, and then you can download the offering memorandum and the financials. So this is how it works when you look at properties through a broker. You have to go to their websites where they list it, because a lot of times they won't list it anywhere else. So I know a lot of people look at LoopNet, but a lot of times brokers won't list a property on LoopNet until they really can't get any traction on their own website. And it's kind of like a last ditch effort where deals go to die, is they go on LoopNet to list it. So if we go to look at multifamily, you can see there's a lot of listings, right? And a lot of times on LoopNet, you're not going to get these big brokerages. You're going to get these smaller mom and pop brokers that don't have their own websites, so they're independent. Well, this one we saw on one of the broker websites, the Scrove at Renwick. I think we saw that right here. So this is probably listed by KET. But you're going to see stuff like this, like a 4-unit building from Bobby De La Rosa. He's not a big brokerage, right? He just has a one-off small apartment complex. He listed on LoopNet. Same thing with this. This small 12-unit listed by just one-off broker, right? So you can also find these smaller deals on LoopNet. And otherwise, a good thing to use LoopNet for is normally these listings won't be a deal, but you can find the broker contacts and you can make relationships with these brokers so that when they get better deals in the future, they can send it to you off market. Like all these smaller properties, Kevin Rouse Commercial Brokerage, make contacts with them, make a relationship with them, and then when they get more deals like this coming up, you can get first look at it before it goes to the market. So that's really just a breakdown of how to look at broker websites. Like I said, there's the main ones like Marcus & Millichap, Transwestern, Newmark Knight Frank, Berkadia, JLL, and then you're gonna have smaller local brokerages in your city. And then use LoopNet to find some other smaller one-off brokerages as well. And that's basically how you can find deals on market by broker, but how you also build relationships to get these pocket deals from the brokers before they hit the market in the future. So if you want to find deals off market, there's different ways to target these lists. Keep in mind, we're trying to focus on mom and pop sellers from 10 to 50 units. The first way is to pull the evictions list. Your local county courthouse is going to have a list of recent eviction cases. That's public information. Anyone can request it. You might even be doing this already for single family houses, but when you pull the eviction list, you can also see all the apartments that have evictions. What you want to do is you want to filter it out first to anyone that's an apartment complex, but it's a mom and pop owner, by seeing that the personal name is on the eviction, not an LLC name. However, you still want to target the LLC names because some mom and pop owners have an LLC, but they're just very mom and pop still. And it's obviously sometimes pretty obvious when it's a super big apartment complex. It will say the complex name and LP and all these things, and you can probably just cut those out of the list and only call the mom and pop ones. I think this worked really well. I was able to wholesale 2 12-unit apartment complexes off the eviction list. I had pulled the list, my cold caller had called the list, and then this one lady was interested in selling her property. It was an older lady, she was over 80 years old, and she was still self-managing these 2 12 units in a Class D ghetto area. Hence all these evictions she was doing. And she was doing these evictions herself. She was managing it herself. It was total mom and pop. Both the apartments did a lot of work, and I was able to get a pretty good deal on them. I ended up making over 6 figures on both of them combined. So it's definitely very lucrative and a very great way to find mom and pop owners by pooling the eviction list and cold calling them. The next method is a tax delinquent list. It's similar to the eviction list, but you just find mom and pop owners that are behind on taxes. You do the same kind of scrubbing method. You want to find the ones that are the category code of multifamily in your county. For me in Texas is B1. I can delete everything that's not a B1 property. And all the B1 properties, I'll search for any that's under the title of a personal name and hit those first and then hit the LLC ones after. It's the same concept as evictions. Another way is even just driving for dollars. If you drive by an apartment complex that looks like it's not the best shape, write it down, send a letter, cold call, SMS, same thing. That's how I actually got my very first deal. I got a 14-unit apartment complex back in 2018 because in 2017 I drove by the property, I wrote down the address, and I looked up the owner. It was under his personal name still, and his mailing address was his house in Florida. So you can tell right away, out-of-state owner, mom and pop, perfect combination for someone that wants to sell. And I sent him a letter. He ended up emailing me back, and he was, yeah, I'm in my mid-60s, I'm looking to retire, I want to sell. You know, I took a while to get the deal done, but this just shows that if you do drive for dollars, you can still get deals this way. It's not always has to be from a list. You can just find the ones that look like they're run down or look like they can be run better and just contact the owners. However, it all comes back to being a numbers game, and driving for dollars is just simply not scalable. So what I found is there's 2 kind of subscription services that you can pay for to get data. The first one is CoStar. CoStar is gonna be probably the most accurate and best data, but it's also the most expensive data. The second one is Reonomy. They both can pool commercial lists, including multifamily, and there's a lot of filters on there. It's pretty advanced on what they can do. And you can download an Excel file with the owner names, the phone numbers, addresses, everything, just like a normal single family list. And then you can skip trace it, direct mail, cold call, whatever you want to do, and market to them. These subscriptions are more expensive and you have to pay membership fees, but these are the only ones I've really found that can accurately pull multifamily data. List Source and all those don't really pull accurate data, let alone let you filter it for motivated sellers. Once you start finding leads, you're gonna have to learn how to underwrite the leads to see if they're a good deal. Underwriting is a very complicated process, but there are some tools that can help you make the process easier. I recommend the Michael Blanc Deal Analyzer. It's not that expensive and you just pay one time, but it's a very robust and complex tool that can underwrite for a lot of situations. So if you take the time to learn how to underwrite using that tool, it'll greatly help you out and speed up the process. I personally use the same deal analyzer when I underwrite my own deals. So an important criteria when underwriting deals is cap rate, which we've went over in the terminology section. So a lot of times brokers list deals based on cap rate on pro forma, not on the actuals. And we don't want to do that because we never know if the pro forma will actually be hit. Actual data on the actual income and expenses is what you want to underwrite to. So you always ask for a T12 to see what the actual expenses and income is for the property. Just because a property can perform and do very well doesn't mean it will. So that's why we can't really rely on a pro forma. And a lot of beginners get fixated on cap rate over returns. For example, they'll market a deal at a 7 cap, or they think, oh, this deal is at a 9 cap, it's gotta be a good deal. More advanced syndicators don't really look at the cap rate and don't really pay much attention to it because the actual returns, like the cash on cash return and the IRR, are more important metrics to see if the deal pencils out or not. Those are gonna be the 2 main criteria that we look at when we underwrite these deals in the deal analyzer, is to make sure we hit a double-digit cash on cash return and an IRR above 15%. However, these numbers will fluctuate based on the demand for your investors. investors. Some investors want a higher return and some want a lower return. It all depends on what they're comfortable with being a silent investor. So before jumping into a full-blown underwriting using the deal analyzer, you want to preliminary underwrite the deal with a few parameters to see if it's even worth it or if it's even a deal to begin with. What I like to do is first I like to check if the rents are under market. Once you know the address of the property, just go on apartments.com or Zillow and look up other apartment complexes for rent in that same area and see if the rents are about the same or if the property you're looking at is actually lower and under market on the rents compared to the competition. That will give you an idea that there is some value add opportunity to raise the rents. However, if you see that your rents at the apartment you're looking at is actually higher than the competition, it might be a sign that there isn't any room to push the rents and it might not be sustainable and your rents might drop in the future, which could affect your underwriting and performance of the property. Next, you want to look at the management. Is the property being mismanaged or not managed professionally? A lot of times a good indicator of that is the expenses. If they have very high expenses, it's probably not being managed correctly. Or if it has very low occupancy, like under 90% occupied, that's another sign that the management doesn't know what they're doing when it comes to leasing up and marketing. Every market is different, so know what the typical water bill, electric bill, etc. runs in your market. Then you can look at the P&L and see if things are being overpaid or overcharged on their expense items. And if you see a property that's running over 60% expenses compared to their income, that's a good sign that there's probably some mismanagement going on somewhere on why they're paying so much in expenses. These are all opportunities that can make a good deal if you can add value by reducing the expenses or increasing the occupancy. Another thing you want to look at is the amount of rehab the property needs. A property can be cash flowing right now, but it might have a lot of deferred maintenance and CapEx items that need to be addressed when you purchase the property, like a new roof or new windows, which don't affect the NOI or the value of the property, but needs to be done. This can really skew your numbers and your returns if you're putting in more capital than you expected. Also, be creative in trying to find other income opportunities on the property, such as adding charges for pet fees or pet rents, or valet trash services, or finding areas they can convert into storage space, or charging for covered parking. These are different ways to get some ancillary income, but they make a big difference on your NOI and in turn increase the value of your property. Now, when it comes to broker listed deals, you're gonna have all the documents you need to do a full underwriting. You're gonna have rent rolls, CapEx schedules, T12, P&L statements, market rent survey comparables. A broker will provide all that in the offering memorandum, and then that can give you a lot of information for you to plug it into the deal analyzer and run your numbers. If you're trying to do a syndication, you want to target at least an 8% cash on cash return and an 18% IRR or better. Now, that depends on the appetite of your investors, but most investors want those type of returns, if not better. However, you might find a family office or some other big investor that might be okay with lower returns, like 5% cash on cash and maybe a 10 to 12% IRR. So in that case, you can have more spread for yourself, or you can do a higher offer price to make the deal work. However, if you're gonna do off-market marketing and you're gonna target mom and pop owners, a lot of times they aren't gonna have all these documents that you need to do a full underwriting. For those, I like to do a quick rule of thumb analysis before digging in and doing a full-blown underwriting analysis. Honestly, the only thing you need from mom and pops to do an analysis is the unit mix. How many units and how many units of each type? So for example, I just asked them, hey, how many units is the apartment complex? If they tell me it's 32 units, I'll ask them what the unit mix is. How many 1-bed, 1-baths and how many 2-bed, 1-baths? Once I have that number, that's all I need from the sellers and I don't bother them with anything else. Obviously, it'd be very nice if they do have rent rolls, P&Ls, T12 statements that they can send you, but a lot of times they won't have those items. Once I have the unit mix, I can just go on Zillow and apartments.com to see what the typical market rents are for those types of units. And then I can add them all together to get the total gross monthly rent potential. With that, I divide it by 0.01 or the 1% rule to kind of get a rough number. For example, if we have a 40-unit apartment complex, 20 of the units are 1-bed, 1-bath that rent for $1,000, and 20 of the units are 2-bed, 2-baths that rent for $1,500. The total monthly rent, if it's 100% occupied, will be $50,000 a month. Now divide that by 0.01. If the price is around $5 million or less, then it's worth looking into more. However, if they're asking like $7 million, then you know it's probably not going to work out and you don't have to waste your time with a full-blown underwriting. Another thing you can do to check, if you know the cap rate in that area or that market you're looking at, you can do a quick analysis by taking that 50,000, multiplying it by 12, then multiplying by 0.9% for a 10% vacancy built in, and then dividing that number by 2 to get 50% expenses, and then dividing that by the cap rate to see what price you should be at. So for example, 50,000 times 12 is 600,000. Take away 10% for vacancy and you're down to 540,000. Divide that by 2 and you get 270,000. And then if the market has a cap rate of 6%, divide that by 0.06. That gives you 4.5 million. So as you see, that's pretty close to the 5 million number we did with the 1% rule. So you know it probably needs to be for sure lower than 5 million and preferably lower than 4.5 million. So I'll put a free training below on showing how I underwrite and analyze. It's exactly how I mitigate my risk and maximize my upside for maximum profit potential. And if you want to actually work with me on bigger deals like the one I'm talking about in today's video, you can also apply for that there too. So in this video, I'm gonna go over how to analyze a mom and pop lead when it comes in with some rule of thumb examples. This is Podio, my CRM, and when I get a lead, it comes into here. So this lead came in May. It's a property in Edna, Texas, and on the notes here, you can see from the cold call that this actually came from a Reonomy list that I pulled, and the owner had only owned it since 2020, so only for 3 years. It's a 36 unit apartment complex, so it has 36 units. It has 18 3-bed 1-bath units, 10 2-1s, and 8 1-1s. 20 units have been renovated, and there's only 3 unoccupied. He's getting 20 to 25K a month on income. These are his expenses, and the price he had was $2.5 million. Roof is 2 years old. He has window units. He doesn't even have full central AC. Gives you info on the flooring and the countertops. He said he did foundation repairs in 2020, and that's about it. So it sounds like it's cosmetically outdated because you still have Formica countertops and whatnot, but we can take a look. So if we go actually look at the property, so if we actually look at the property on the maps, you can see it's in Edna, Texas, which is kind of out here in the middle of nowhere between Houston and San Antonio. Given that's in the middle of nowhere, you need to give it a lower price point because it's not as desirable. But you can see with Google Street View, this is from 2021, so it's not too old. The area around it is okay, I guess. Little beat up the road right there, but you see these are the apartment complexes here. They're brick buildings. They have older windows. They do have central AC units here, so I don't know why he said those window units. But you can see it's kind of like 36 units and it's split between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 buildings essentially. So maybe 8 units a building. So that's pretty typical for older buildings in Texas to have 8 or 16 units a building. What we want to do is look at the rent comps, but we can go off what he gave us first. Since he told us 20 to 25K a month, let's just assume half of that, 22.5. The quick 1% rule, $22,500 divided by 0.01 is $2.25 million. And he wants $2.5 million. So we're kind of in the ballpark, right? So it's not too far off. But now let's dig in deeper. First, given that it's in a remote market, you probably want to do more conservative than the 1% rule. And 2, given the age of the property, it looks like it needs some work, right? You have older AC units, older windows, needs some rehab. It's not in pristine shape. So it's probably not going to get 2.5 or 2.25 anymore. If we want to look at the rent, we can look at Zillow and apartments.com, but I don't know if somewhere that small has any rent comps available. So let's take a look. Then we go to rent. So, okay, there are some stuff at Edna for rent on apartments.com. So theirs is kind of on the southeast side. So like this property right here would be a good comp. So they're charging $700 a month for 1-bed, 1-bath at this property. Now let's look on Zillow. Is there anything on Zillow? Nope, it's just that same building. So like I thought, there's no really comps because it's the middle of nowhere. So what you want to do is remove the boundary, and let's look at this town right here. $1,500 for a newly built house. That's 3.2. So that gives you kind of an idea. $950 for a 1-1. Okay, so 700 sounds about right. We can probably guess 800 for the 2-1s is what my rough guess would be, and then maybe 900 to 1,000 for that. But we can also see that it has 20 to 25K a month. So let's do 22,000 a month divided by 36 units. Comes out to about $600 a month. So that sounds about right. His income sounds right. He's not lying about it. If anything, it might be a little low. You could probably get 600 for the 1-beds, 700 for the 2-beds, and 800 for the 3-beds. If you did that, you would get really about $26,000 a month in rent if it was fully occupied. So this sounds about right. His numbers sound about right. His expenses sound way off. He just thinks there's only $770 in expenses a month, or $2,700 a month in expenses. There's no way his expenses are just 10% of his rent. Obviously not including taxes and insurance, so add that back in, but still, that's still very low. So we still want to go off 50% rule for us. So let's take his numbers. Let's do 22,500 times 12. That's 270,000 a year times 0.5 is 135,000. And let's divide by 0.07, a 7 cap. because it's in a more remote market and it's an older property, so it's going to have a higher cap rate. Because I know that in Houston, something like that, in Houston is going to go for a 6 cap or 6.5 cap. So something out in the middle of nowhere, Texas is going to be a higher cap rate. Once you do that, you get 1.93 million, which is a little lower. So yeah, so his 2.5 is going to be high because the 1% rule was at a 2.25 and then the cap rate was at 1.93. And just given that it needs some work probably just from the pictures on Google Street View and it being so remote, I would maybe even say the value is actually at 1.8, 1.75. So I think I put right here, right, I put my ARV or my value at 1.75 million. And that if I was to buy this for myself to keep, I'll have to be around the 1 million mark, which is nowhere close to his asking price of 2.5 million. So we already know that this is not a deal. We don't have to waste our time doing a full-blown underwriting because we did some rule of thumbs and we saw that our pricing is way too far off from each other. So that's kind of how it works when I look at these leads that come in from these mom and pop sellers. So this one is another lead. We can go through this example one more time just to really get it through. This one came back a while. This one's in Houston. It's 12 units. So we can see the notes here. It basically said he was offered 1.1 million, but he said no. He's asked for 1.5 million, vinyl floorings, tile, Formica countertops, but he'll get quartz soon when tenants move out. New central ACs, roof is only 8 years old. And there's 12 units, 8 2-bedroom units that he's renting for 900 and 4 1-bedroom units he's renting for 750. So off the bat, he gives you that information. We can do the math. So 900 times 8 plus 750 times 4, that gets you $10,200 a month total. Divide that by 0.01. 1% rule will put him at $1 million. That's probably why this other investor offered 1.1 million. Now, if we do cap rate, right, 10,200 a month times 12 times 0.9 for vacancy times 0.5 for expenses, you're looking at $55,000. Now, let me see where in Houston exactly it is, so before I apply cap rate to it. Yeah, so it's in the ghetto. Like, this is pretty ghetto area, not a great area. So I do a 7 cap on it, and on a 7 cap, you're only getting $786,000. So yeah, nowhere close to 1.5 million. And this is the property, and this is a very recent Google Street View. As you can see, doesn't look great, looks old, run down. Yeah, so that's probably not a deal, because at 1% rule, I'm at 1 million. I'll actually put 1.2 million for ARV because I was generous that he had new ACs, newer roof, vinyl floors, new quartz, new walls, etc. New walls and bathroom and toilets. So I assumed it was fully renovated, so I gave him a higher valuation. But my max offer was 900K. As we can see, he's asking way too much. I'm only 2/3 of what his asking price is. So I can do a full-blown underwriting, but I know I'm not going to get anywhere close to 1.5, just given these 2 rule of thumbs. So I can just make my lowball offer and be on my way and not waste any more time. So that's kind of how I analyze these mom and pop leads when they come in, to see if it's worth doing a full underwriting by just doing these rules of thumbs. In this video, I'm going to go over how to fully analyze a property, whether it be for a syndication, a joint venture, or for yourself, and whether it be from a broker or off market. This is going to be a full detailed underwriting of a property to determine your best offer price and to see if it's a deal or not. This deal analyzer costs $150, but it's a one-time payment, and it's highly worth it if you're going to be doing multifamily, as it's probably the most robust multifamily underwriting tool I've seen and used. I'm not affiliated with him. I'm not making any commissions. I just really like this product and I use it a lot, so I recommend it. They have training videos here you can watch to learn how to use the tool, etc. So it's great for beginners as well as advanced syndicators. So let's take an example. Let's take a property that we looked at earlier in the course, the Rawson Heights apartment complex. We have the P&L for this property. So what we can do is we can start by filling out the basic information of this property. So if we go on the deal analyzer, on this scenarios page, this is kind of the page you fill out, and then the summary page is also be your important page. But in the scenarios, we can fill out all the parts that we need to know. So we don't know the price, right? So let's just throw an arbitrary price. Given the location and where it's at, I wouldn't be surprised if it's asking for 5 million. So let's just start with that as an arbitrary price. Right here we know it's 60 units, so let's populate that number, 60. Let's take that 25% down payment, that's fine. That's about it. Repairs and reserves, we don't know until we walk the property what money will be needed to do any renovations or CapEx items. From what it looks like, it's in pretty good shape, but they could be just showing a renovated unit. They could have some pretty bad units. The roof looks somewhat older. but still has a few years of life left. You see that white on the ridge line? That's an indication that it's getting a little old, a lot of wear and tear, and that has to be replaced soon. So let's just budget about $3,000 a unit. If we do 3,000 times 60, we're gonna have $180,000. We're gonna have that budgeted in for CapEx and repairs. So now let's go to the P&L document that they've provided us. So if we open up their rent roll, we can see what their market rents are and what the actual rents are. We're gonna do the actual rents. So if we look at all the actual rents, it's $59,305. Or what we can do is we can look at the market rents and add back in the ones that have zero, and it's $65,750. And that's per month. So we multiply that by 12. You're looking at $789,000 as your potential gross rent if everything was occupied. Now we're putting 10% for vacancy. I'm gonna put in about 3% for concessions, loss to lease, and bad debt. Other income. Now let's go back to the P&L. As you see, they have water reimbursement, month-to-month fees, application incomes, and pet fees. Those items total out to right here, $57,672. So let's put $57,672. And then onto the expenses. Let's go on their actual expenses. So on real estate taxes, they have $51,012. So let's put $51,012. Their insurance, let's see where the property insurance is, right here. $9,611. That seems very low. I don't believe that's the real tax, their insurance. That just must be their liability insurance. They must have another insurance somewhere. No, that's what they say are their insurance. That is suspiciously low. I would not underwrite that when I do my underwriting, because I know it's gonna cost more than that, just because I have properties that are smaller than that and they cost more for insurance. So I have to figure out where that went wrong, but let's just mark that for now. If we have the management fee, we're gonna have $59,625. I think the management is screwing them over, personally. And then you have payroll. So these two items, $104,658. So payroll is $104,658. Now let's go to the utilities. So gas and electric, that's weird to have that combined, but okay, $682,293. So let's just say gas is $682,293. Water and sewer, $64,011. Trash removal, $16,847. So let's replace the electricity with internet and telephone. So right here we see the combined total is $4,821. Oh, legal and accounting, that's good, 178874. So legal right here, 84. All right, so contract services, that's gonna be security, landscape. So security plus landscape combined is 12,214. Repairs and maintenance is gonna have all of these, unless they're counting up HVAC and appliances as CapEx. So maybe those are CapEx items. That's why the price is so high, and that's considered capital expenditure, not considered operating expense. HVAC, that looks like a new unit, 7,000. So we can maybe call these two line items CapEx, capital expenditures, and we don't count that under the operating expense because those are considered capital improvements, and we have a separate budget for that. So we'll take those out, and that's being generous because otherwise it'll make no sense on the numbers. So repairs and maintenance, though, you're at $108,608, which is a ton. $108,608. Then you just have all this miscellaneous stuff here. So let's just add it up right here. 6,895,77. So now I have all their expenses that they have reported all added on here. And then you want to add in some deposit to replacement reserve. What that is basically you're setting aside some money for CapEx in the future. And what you typically want to do is about $300 per unit per year. So 300 times 60 would be 18,000. So set aside 18,000. So once you crunch all these numbers, you can see that their expenses are running at 63%, which is super high, and their NOI is only $471,000. And then when we come to the debt service, right now interest rates are more going to be about like 5.75, really 6 for Freddie and Fannie debt. And you can see it, you're not even gonna meet the debt service coverage ratio to get a loan. So you might have to go bridge debt or hard money or seller finance. But once you have entered that in, we can go to the summary and we can see the breakdown over here. We're assuming they're asking $5 million, which is $83K a door, which is sounds about right for that part of town and for that age and asset type. You're gonna have to put 25% down. We're gonna have to bring about $180K of CapEx items to repair stuff, fix stuff up. Acquisition fee, this is only for a syndication, and normally even then it's maybe 1 or 2%. So let's put like 1%. Closing costs, cap rate at resale, 7 cap, sounds about right. And you see everything is negative right now. And then the syndication split, sometimes there's asset management fees, capital transaction fees. If you're buying it for yourself or a JV, just put 0 for all this and 100 for the member equity. But let's put 80% equity for the investors and then 20% for you as the syndicator. Now let's go to the acquisition costs. So these closing costs are going to vary depending on where you are in the country and your title company, etc. I know a title policy is not going to be that much for me in Texas. It's probably going to be like half that. Oops. No, 0.3. There we go. Survey. I don't have transfer taxes in Texas, so that's not applicable. Attorney fees, legal fees, PPM. Inspections. My guys don't really charge me money for inspections, so that's not applicable to me either. Appraisal, origination fee 1%. It's all about right. Insurance. So my closing cost is going to be a lot less. And then when we go to the P&L, this is the next place we want to look at. Oh, I see the issue. So right here in offer, we didn't put the income in. That's why everything got screwed up. Okay, I see what happened. Okay, so now everything should be populated correctly. So go back to the summary page. It should all be populated. Go to the P&L. Okay, so we go off the pro forma. They're saying that historically they're actually pulling in more than the 744, but that's what we're seeing right now on this trailing 12. They're saying that year one we should pull in $840,000. Even with 3% increases in rent across the board, I don't think you're gonna get that. Yes, I'm being more conservative with the vacancies and the concessions. We could drop that if you want. You can drop that to about 7% vacancy. Is about market in Houston. But even then, you're only gonna come up to 767. I don't see you coming up to 840,000 unless you're jumping the rents a ton. But the rents already are averaging $1,100 a month with the current numbers. So we have to see what they said they can get the rents up to, because the average is $1,191. So that's what they're saying you can get is $1,200 a month. That's about a 10% increase. I don't think that's possible in 1 year, just given like the photos of the asset and the location. But I will give them some leeway, considering that the rent comps are a lot higher on these other properties. But I don't know how nice they are, right? So let's say we get a 1,200. Let's say we raise $100 a month across the board in the first 2 years, which is really pushing it, in my opinion. So to be conservative, I'm not even gonna say that. I'm gonna say 1,150, and then let's say we can jump to 1,200 by year 3. So our rent growth is gonna be higher than 3% a year, and then let's just say 1,250 and 1,300. In year 5 is going to be the rent growth. Even then, your expenses are still high. So let's say year 1 is going to be high, but let's say for some reason this repairs and maintenance is super high, right? Let's say we can bring that down. Let's say we bring that down to 90,000 the year 2, or bring it down to 80,000. That should be more about in line of what is going on, especially if they made a bunch of repairs this year already and some CapEx. It should be less repairs going forward. This management fee of almost 8% is super high. A normal management fee, if you were to have payroll included, should be around 6%, if not lower. Now, payroll, like I said, I would cut them out. At a 60-unit apartment complex, it doesn't make any sense to have a full-time staff. Or you just have one person full-time, and they don't need to be paid $100K a year. You can probably pay them in Houston $75,000. It's a fair salary for full-time property management. Now, if you do that, you see our expenses get back down to 50%, which is about right. However, remember what I said, the insurance is way too low. That should not be correct. I would say that insurance is probably going to be more around the 40,000 mark. Unfortunately, that's just the cost of insurance nowadays in Houston. It's gotten super expensive, especially for older properties like this. And the property taxes are probably going to jump. Once you sell a property, they reassess it kind of every year, and when the county sees a sale or transaction, they kind of jump the price of the property taxes to meet market value. So I'm gonna say it's probably gonna jump up to about $68,000. So now you see your expenses are back up to about 56%, which is about right for a class B- C+ property like this. And I'm giving it all in year 2. So year 1 that we buy it, I'm assuming the worst case we keep it the same, but it's probably gonna gradually get cut down until we hit this, right? So even when we look at that, the property is barely cash flowing at that point. Look, you're getting 3% cash flow, 4% cash flow, 5% cash flow to the investors. This is after the 80-20 split, and that's because our interest rates are high. A 6% interest rate, it's only so much you can do, right? In today's market with these high interest rates, it's very hard for deals to pencil. Now this is assuming we sell it in year 5. That's okay, we can keep that assumption. But let's go here on the exit. In year 5, our NOI is $412,000. We sell it at a 7 cap. We're only selling it for $5.9 million. So the property really hasn't gone up that much in value. So it breaks down all the return of capital to the investors, how much the GPs make on the syndication, etc., and all the final numbers. As you can see, your IRR is only 8.78%. That's very low. And the cash on cash is only 4.29%. That's also very low. See, it even has tips right here. You should be at least 15% plus on the IRR and 9% plus on the cash on cash. I'm actually cool with like 7% cash on cash if it's like a class A asset or a nicer area. For this part of town, then I want at least 8% to 9% as well. And if you do a refinance, I also have the breakdown of how that works. All you do here is change it out to refinance in the cash out refinance section, but we'll just stick to a sale. So now that we know these numbers, there's one last thing we need to know is the financing. So if you buy this property on a Freddie Mac SBL loan or agency debt, I know that you're going to get at least 2 to 3 years of interest only payments because of the loan amount and the condition of the property, etc. So if you go back to the P&L, we're not accounting for interest only payments on the loan. You have principal and interest all the way from the start. But I own another property in Houston, and Freddie Mac gave me 3 years interest only when I refinanced the property. So if we did interest only on this property, we're gonna have no principal payments for the first 3 years. And as you can see, that really jumps the cash flow up pretty high because now you're paying less than the mortgage. And then the principal kicked back in year 4, 5, 6, etc. But we sell in year 5. So we also have to take into account prepayment penalty. That's probably built into this calculator, but if not, you have to add that back in. But so now you can see your returns are a little better. Your IRR is now double digits, and your cash on cash is 5.8%. But it's still not high enough. So when I see this, I come back to here, and it's all back down to the purchase price now. That, or we lower the amount of money we bring to the table. However, 25% is pretty standard. Maybe it doesn't need as much work, or maybe we can skip a few items. Maybe we can bring this down to $150,000, right? That'll juice your returns a little bit more. Maybe we sacrifice this asset management fee, or we sacrifice this acquisition fee down to 0 to save some money for the investors coming out of pocket. You can see it juices up the returns a little bit. So the IRR is now 11.5, and the cash on cash is about 6. But still, I think not good enough. And I'd say our offer has to come down. Let's say we offer 4.5 million. How does that shift the numbers? We see here at 4.5 million, the numbers start working. Your IRR jumps to 17.5%, and your cash on cash jumps to 8%. And this should be pretty accurate of real life expenses and income. So I'm pretty confident in these numbers. It's not ideal, but these numbers work. But we want to be sure and be safe. So 4.5 is probably our max offer. We probably want to come in a little lower. I'd probably come in at like a 4.25. Because at that point, I get my 9% cash on cash and a 20% IRR like I wanted. And then on the exit, I'm still only selling for 5.9 million. I'm still being conservative still, but the numbers all pencil out now because of the IO on the loan has bumped my cash on cash return, and they have less money in the deal since we're paying at a lower purchase price and we're taking away this acquisition fee, that the numbers start to make sense. So as you can see, this calculator helps you a lot by giving you hints on what to look for, and like green and red to tell you if it's a good or bad deal. Obviously, take it all with a grain of salt because every market varies and every deal is different. And like I said, your investors might not be looking for a 20% IRR or 9% cash flow. They might be bigger hedge fund investors that are okay with lower returns, and then they might be cool with the returns that were provided with a 5 million purchase price. They might be cool with 6% return, cash on cash, and 11% IRR. That's still double-digit returns annually. But we're going to be conservative because most investors want to make more money on the deal, especially if they're tied up for 5 years. So as you can see, at 4.25 million, you're only paying $70K a door, which might be doable for this property in this location, but it's gonna be tough. So what I would do now is I'd probably write an LOI at 4.25 million, send it into the broker as my offer. So as you can see, it's a lot more detailed and powerful, this deal analyzer. It goes through everything from acquisition costs, your exit strategies, your returns. It breaks it all down for you right here. Your IRR is calculated and broken down right here. Your loans, if you have a second mortgage, a supplemental loan, if you do a refinance, all of this gets broken down here, right? So it's a super powerful tool that I highly recommend. This 10-minute offer is the same thing. If you know the gross potential annual income, which we have here in the scenarios, which was 789, put in 789, it does the math for you. Take away 10% for vacancy, half expenses, cap rate, rule of thumb purchase price. So 4.4. We ran the numbers and we were pretty close. 4.5 was our max, and we want to be at 4.25 if we can. So this rule of thumb is actually a pretty good, pretty close offer. However, we're in a 7% cap market, so it would tell us, oh, 5 million is a good deal. But that's because they only assume 50% expenses, and we realize in Houston with the property taxes and the insurance, you're never gonna have expenses that low. It's gonna run 50% or higher. As you see, the rule of thumb is a good way to take a quick look, but we wanna do the full breakdown to get an accurate number and be confident in it that we can get the investors our money. Once you are done analyzing the property and you want to submit an offer, you have to submit a letter of intent. A letter of intent is just a quick way to present your terms to the seller. It's a non-binding agreement, which means even after you and the seller sign the letter of intent, the seller is not obligated to sell to you and you are not obligated to buy the property. It's just a quick way to negotiate before drafting a full purchase and sales agreement, which normally can be 15 plus pages. It's more to spell out the major terms like the purchase price, the down payment, how you're financing it, the earnest money amount, the due diligence time period, and stuff like that, all in a quick 1 or 2 page document. For mom and pop sellers, you normally don't even need to do a LOI and you can jump straight to a PSA contract. So in this video, I'm going to go over how to fill out an LOI. I just have the standard Texas Realtor LOI in front of me, and you can also Google LOI templates on Google, and there's a lot of 1 or 2 page LOIs you can fill out. I'll go through this one. You can see this one's only a 2-page template. It's very generic. You start out with the seller and buyer information. So you can find that on the county appraisal district. You can put the seller's name, the buyer's name, which is yourself, property address, sales price. So let's just use the same apartment we've been doing for the underwriting, this Roslyn Heights Apartments. As you can see, the address is right here. And if you go to the Harris County Appraisal District, you can actually look up the owner of that property. So the address is 7015 Woodsman Trail. We can copy that and put it here. And then you can see right here is the owner. And then here, it'll give you the information of the property. You can see the owner's name is Centennial Lone Star Properties, LLC. So we can put that as the seller. And then their address is this address right here, 5018 Harbortown Lane, Fort Myers, Florida. And then the phone and email, you can leave blank, or if you have, you can put it in there. Then for buyer, you put your own LLC information. So I'll just put mine. Then you put your address, property. So you have the property address right here. And it's in 77040. Boom. Sales price. We're going to try to offer 4.25 million. We're going to have probably 25% down. So if we do the math, $4,250 times 0.25, $1,062,500 is the down payment. And then our loan amount is going to be $318.75. So earnest money, 1% is pretty typical, or you can try to get it lower. But since we're dealing with a broker, I'm just gonna put 1%, so that's gonna be $42,500. Title company, you can pick whatever title company you want to use. Feasibility period, that's your due diligence period on when you can inspect the property and look for any issues. 30 days is typical. Back when it was a super hot market, back in like 2019 and 2021, 0 days feasibility, just buying it as is because it was such a hot market. But now that the market's cooled down a bit, you can now get back those 30 days and it's still pretty normal and you won't lose out on any offers. Financing contingency, we'll do another 30 days. We'll actually do 60 days after the effective date, because financing normally takes 2 months when you do Freddie Mac loan or any kind of agency debt. It takes some time for them to process it. Closing date, do 30 days after the feasibility period. If you can, try to do 45 just to buy you some more time. Title costs paid by the seller, if possible. Buyer should pay for certain modification. Survey, so basically if the seller has a survey, they'll provide the survey, and they normally do. If not, you can select the seller will pay for one, or you, the buyer, will pay for one. Normally the buyer will have to pay for one. Getting a general warranty deed. If there is a broker, you fill that out. So here you would have right here, so you can put Kyle, phone, email, etc. Fill it all out here. I just have this crossed out because normally I send offers directly to the seller and there's no brokers involved. But if you do have a broker, just cross out all these things and make it and fill it out. Property condition, we'll buy it as is, except if there's something that you want the sellers to fix before closing, you put it here. Buyer may assign the contract. So this isn't what you think. This isn't really wholesaling it. It can also count as wholesaling it. But what happens a lot of times if you buy these bigger apartments is you haven't formed the LLC yet. Normally you form a new LLC for each property. So this is just an LLC I put now, my LLC that I own. But when I buy this apartment, I'll probably do a new LLC like Rosslyn LLC or 7015 Woodsman LLC. It's going to have a separate entity just to own this property for protection purposes. And we haven't formed that LLC yet because we're not under contract. We're not sure we're going to close. We're not going to waste the money and time to start an LLC and then not even buy the property. So that's the reason they have this assignment right here. It's not what you think. It's not typical wholesale. You're assigning it to another investor. It's more like you haven't formed the LLC that's going to own the property yet. That's why you have this assignment clause in there. Let's say I form 7015 Woodsman LLC. About maybe a couple weeks before closing, then I can do an assignment contract assigning this to my new LLC 7015 Woodsman to own the property. But like I said, it can also double as an assignment where you find an end buyer if you want to wholesale multifamily instead of buying it for yourself. Special provisions, that's any special conditions you negotiate with the seller or that's needed on a case-by-case basis. Like I said right here, it says that it's a non-binding agreement. So this letter of intent is not intended to be a legally binding agreement of purchase and sale. Neither party shall be bound or have the obligation to pursue negotiations of any other obligations of any kind until a definitive contract is signed and delivered by the parties. So basically, like I said, it's a non-binding. No one's obligated to perform. It's just kind of to get a glance of all the big items on what is going to be in the contract and agree on that before building out a full-blown contract. And then the buyer or the seller will create the contract. It all depends. Up to you, negotiation-wise, it's up to you. It doesn't matter who creates it, but one of them will. And then when does this letter of intent expire? And then it's easy to see it auto-populates the seller and buyer. Then you put your name, title, date, and you sign it, and then you send it off to the seller. And that's how you fill out an LOI. As you see, it's pretty basic, like any standard real estate contract. If this is for Texas. If you're not in Texas, you can Google like an LOI template, multifamily LOI template, and you're gonna have a bunch of different templates you can just copy from. Same thing here, right? Letter of intent to purchase, seller, buyer, the terms. So Apartment Solutions LLC or its nominee, that's kind of the assignment part where they don't know what LLC they have yet. The owner, the address, price, down payment, earnest money, all the same simple terms, all the same information, but just slightly different formatting. So just Google any of these LOI templates. A lot of them are free. If not, just copy it onto Microsoft Word. Just create your own copying it. And that's how you fill out an LOI. Now, the PSA is the purchase and sales agreement, which is the official contract to actually buy the property. A lot of times for mom and pop sellers, you can just use the standard state contract for commercial property to save you time. Because for the larger properties, the larger multifamily from brokers, normally a lawyer custom drafts a PSA for each transaction, and that can be very costly and time consuming as well. This is a legally binding document, so if you're selling a property or you're trying to buy a property, you're obligated to purchase and perform on the contract. So we're gonna go over how to fill out a PSA or purchase and sales agreement. I'm just using a standard Texas Realtors one. As many mom and pop sellers, this is fine. But if you're buying these larger broker deals, you're probably gonna have a lawyer custom draft one for each deal for you, and it'll be a lot more expensive and take a lot more time. However, I'm just gonna go over the standard Texas contract. As you can see, it's the same thing in the beginning. You have the seller, their information, buyer, your information, the property address, and then you want the legal description. You can find that on the county appraisal website. So where we found all this information for the LOI, over here where it says legal description, that's the legal description right here. So you can just copy this and then here, paste it, and that's it. We have the price from earlier. Let's just assume they accepted your 4.25 million offer. This is where you put the cash price or the cash portion, the financing, third-party financing. That's going to be 3187500. So you have a financing contingency. It is contingent on the buyer obtaining financing. And then you're gonna have to attach this addendum. Title, you put your title company, whatever. Like I said, this one was, I think, 42,500 was earnest money. And then we use capital title. So basically what you can negotiate is you can put less earnest money up front, let's say 20,000. But if everything goes well, you'll deposit another 25,000. 3 days after your option period is up. That way it can buy you more time to have less money up front while you do your due diligence period, because then if you back out, you can still just get your 20K back. And then this gives a seller more earnest money after due diligence is over to show that you're serious about buying it. So title policy, it's all pretty standard. And if there's any issues with the title policy, it's the expense of the buyer. Survey within 15 days, seller will give them the survey. If they don't have one, the buyer will pay for a new survey. That's what this one says. Or you can choose seller will get the survey or the buyer will pay for the survey. So those are your options. UCC search, that's to really search up their LLC to make sure there's no liens or anything on the LLC that can affect the property. Property conditions, so feasibility period. You have, normally we try to put 30 days to do our due diligence. This one, it's independent consideration. You don't have to check it at all. You can leave it blank, right? That would be ideal. However, you can check it to make this more appealing of an offer to the seller. It basically says if we back out of this contract, we get our earnest money back, but you can put a little bit as non-refundable. So it kind of gives the seller a more attractive offer because it shows, hey, even if I back out, you'll still get to keep $5,000. So you don't want to do this unless you're like pretty confident that you're going to buy this deal and you've walked it already. It looks pretty good from your first look and there's no hidden surprises that you know of just from the initial walkthrough. They can make you a much stronger offer that can beat out another offer that could be identical in all the terms and pricing, but they don't have this extra clause. So when it was a very hot market, people were doing this. They were actually doing the full earnest money amount, doing non-refundable earnest money from day one, right? But like I said, if you can swing it without it, obviously that's ideal for you as the buyer, but it could really help win a deal if you really want to get the deal with the seller. Now, number 2, the feasibility period extension. What you can do is if you're waiting on reports or inspections and the 30 days is coming up, you can ask to an extension of an extra 15 days or 30 days. It all depends on what you negotiate, right? But let's say let's do an extra 15 days if you deposit an extra $15,000 in earnest money with the title company. So basically this helps you buy time if you need it. Obviously, this is good for you if you can get this lower. Let's say if you can somehow swing 5,000 and buy you an extra 15 days of due diligence, that'd be great. And if you don't need it and you don't use it, then you don't have to deposit that extra earnest money. It's just there as a backup in case that 30 days right here isn't enough to do your due diligence. You can add some extra days by depositing more earnest money. That is refundable if you terminate within the time period. Next is during inspections that the seller will have all utilities turned on and that the buyer can go and inspect it, but they can't interfere with operations or the occupants of the property, etc. Property information. So this is something that's very important. For mom and pop sellers, You're probably not going to have any of these items because the mom and pop sellers don't keep track and don't have good paperwork or bookkeeping for these items. But a professional seller, like with a broker, you're going to want to request all these items. You want a copy of the rent roll that's certified by the seller as true and correct. They already gave you that in the document section. Copies of all the leases, copies of all the personal inventory, all the notes and deeds of trust against the against the property that the buyer will assume. That's pretty rare. Copies of all the current service contracts, like I mentioned before. You want to see what the waste contract is, the maintenance contract, the utility contracts, because you don't want to be stuck with a contract that you have to assume that you don't want. Copy of current utility capacity letters, copy of all the warranties on the property. If someone did a roof job, if they said they replaced the roof 3 years ago, it should be under warranty still. Get a copy of that warranty, make sure it's transferable. Copy of the insurance policies to verify the amount they have in their P&L is correct and if they have proper coverage. Copy of all the lease and commission agreements with the property management. A copy of the as-built plans. You probably won't have that, but a newer construction property will have that. Invoices for utilities and repairs incurred by the seller in the 24 months immediately preceding the effective date. You probably won't get 2 years of it, but at least get the last couple of months of utility bills to verify that the numbers on their P&L that they gave you is correct and the repairs. Copy of the P&L statements, income and expense statements. You can select it from probably 2 years back or 3 years back if you want. So if it's November 7th, 2023 right now, you probably want to request them from, let's say January 2020 to November. So you get all of 2020, all of 2021, and then year to date 2023 what the expenses and income are. If they had any environmental assessments, geotechnical reports, soil studies, etc., you want that too. Property tax statements, you don't really need that. You can look that up on the Texas County Appraisal website and on the Texas Tax Assessor's Office. They tell you what the tax value is and how much they paid. So you don't really need that, but you can check it if you want. And then return of information. If you back out during due diligence and you don't want to do the deal, you have to give them all their information back because it's confidential information. So you have 10 days to basically return everything to the buyer. And if it's electronic copies, you would have to get rid of it, delete or destroy it. Contracts affecting operations. So basically it tells the seller until we close, which could be 2 months out, maybe 3 months out, you will have to operate the property in the same manner as the date of the contract with prudent business standards. So they can't just stop working, they can't stop leasing up, they can't just fill it with any random tenant without screening them to keep the occupancy high. They have to still operate it in a professional manner, in a good faith manner that they've been operating it. You'll be surprised. Some people kind of just check out after they have a contract thinking they have a done deal, and they won't fix stuff, they won't repair toilets, because they think, okay, I'm about to sell it anyways, let me just push these repairs onto the next buyer, right? And AC goes out, they're like, dang, I don't want to pay $4,000 to replace the AC system, let me just wait and get it sold. So that's kind of what this says. Obviously, sometimes it still happens, but this kind of helps prevent some of it and gives you some recourse as a buyer. Leases, basically if the seller leases a unit to a new tenant during this period, they have to get your consent, or they renew a lease, or they make any changes to a lease. They have to get your written consent as the buyer that you approve of the leasing. Estoppel certificates, I mentioned before, it's to make sure that the tenant also signs on it so they can confirm that the information that the seller's giving you is correct and they're all on the same page. Mom and pop sellers probably won't do this, but these bigger brokers, you can probably do it. You can probably give them 30 days as it's going to take a while to get 60 tenants to sign all these documents. So and you don't want them to sign this, right when you sign the day of contract because you're closing 3 months later. You want them to sign it closer to your closing date. So you can select what date you want the certificates, the estoppel certificates to be signed. Once again, the brokers, you're going to go back and fill out the broker information of the brokers that list the property. You won't have a broker as the buyer. Seller will pay the broker's fees, and then this will spell out how much the seller pays. Or they have their own contract between them and Marcus Millichap. Like I said, for a mom and pop seller, you're not going to worry about this section because you won't have any brokers involved if you're off market direct to seller. Closing, you can do closing 45 days after the feasibility period. At closing, seller pays for the title policy and the warranty deed. Any special provisions are right here. This breaks out all the expenses, default, blah, 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 escrow. If the seller is trying to sell it as a 1031 exchange to buy something else, or you as a buyer are trying to buy something for a 1031 exchange, you have to click this section. Seller's not aware of any defects on the property. You guys can send to electronic notices via email, and then any addendums, which you have the financing addendum. Buyer may assign this contract, like I said again, right here. The offer date, and then you sign and send it, and then this is the brokers and the escrow receipt page. So this is the Texas Association of Realtors standard commercial form. And when you go and draft your own PSA, it could be even longer than this and have more terms spelled out. But more or less, it's going to be like this. It's almost like a regular purchase contract for single family, just some more commercial stuff tweaked into there. And as you can see, it's pretty straightforward. Or you can Google your own commercial contract template and use your own. It doesn't have to be an official one. But this is a pretty good contract, at least for Texas. I recommend using it. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple, pretty fairly balanced between buyer and seller. So that's why I use it, especially for mom and pop owners. This is all you really need. It looks very professional. So that's basically what you need to do and how you fill out a purchase and sales agreement. Once you successfully execute a PSA of a seller, you're now under your due diligence time period. You have a window of time normally specified in the contract on how much time you get to analyze the property and do your due diligence. Normally it's 30 days, but sometimes it can be less or more. Now, during due diligence, you want to walk every single unit of the property. This might sound like a lot, especially for larger complexes, but you have to do it. You never know which units could be really beat up by a tenant and need a full gut renovation that you weren't expecting. This is also your chance to see if there's any issues in any of the units, maybe roof leaks or plumbing leaks that you might not see from the outside. On top of that, you want to check all the roofs. You want to get a camera and scope all the sewer lines to make sure the sewer lines are okay. And you want to check all the HVAC machines because these are very costly CapEx items if there's deferred maintenance on them. The next thing you want to check is the contracts. For example, you don't want to buy a property where you're stuck inheriting a contract with a cable company or an internet company for 10 years that you're trying to cut. For example, when I bought my 14 unit, I had to inherit the internet, phone, and cable bill that was being paid for all the tenants. Also, dumpster contracts are normally 3-year contracts. So you want to make sure that if you're buying the property, you can end the contract or see if you have to assume the contract from the previous seller. Same thing goes with pest control, laundry facilities that are owned by a third-party company, etc. The next thing you want to do is a lease audit. What a lease audit is you look at every single lease from every single tenant on the property. The reason you want to do this is to make sure the information matches up. It's to make sure that if they didn't specify they had a pet on the lease, but you walk that unit and you see a pet, you know they didn't pay a pet fee. Also, you can see if there's a lot of month-to-month contracts or they're actually on 12-month leases. With month-to-month, a lot of them could have been filled up recently or they might move out at any time. Also, you want to check the end dates of all the leases. If you see a lot of leases end in November, then that's a red flag because if everyone decides to move out in November, you're right in the slow season and it could take several months to lease back up. So that could be a red flag. You want to see leases that are ending and spread out throughout the year so it's very balanced on when people move in and move out. So you don't have a huge number of move outs at any one time. This also helps when you're walking the units that if you walk in a unit that has a lease but you see it's clearly vacant, you can realize that some of the numbers might not be adding up on the P&Ls. Also check how many units are renovated and how many units are not renovated so you know how much money you need to spend on the property once you buy it. Next, you want to check for deferred maintenance. That's like cracks in the brick, rotted wood siding, beat up parking lots, old windows, old HVAC units, drainage issues, stuff like that that's going to cost a lot of money to fix up but doesn't really affect the income of the property. Last, you want to get estoppel certificates if you can. An estoppel certificate is a document that's signed by the seller or the property management company and by the tenant to both confirm the amount of the rent and the security deposit and any special agreements they might have. The reason you want this is because the seller has a rent roll and a lease stating that their tenant is paying $1,000 a month. Once you take over the property, you can talk to the tenant and they said, oh, well, after that lease, we had a separate agreement by text message, by email, or verbally that I would only pay $900 a month or I would get a discount for staying, etc. You don't want those surprises after you buy the property. That's why you have an estoppel certificate to make sure that both parties are on the same page. Another example is the landlord might say they owe rent, but when you go and try to collect it from the tenant, they'll say they already paid that rent and there could be a discrepancy on he said, she said. So you want to have a estoppel certificate to make sure all the rents and deposits are agreed upon by the tenant and the seller and any special provisions or any special agreements between them. Now, after the whole due diligence period, if there are some issues that popped up that they were not disclosed to you before, you might have to renegotiate with the seller on the price. However, most of the times you don't want to renegotiate with sellers or what they call retrading because a lot of brokers don't like it and that puts a bad name for yourself. So if it's something they already disclosed up front and then you try to retrade, it's a really bad look. But if something that's really important and a genuine concern that was not disclosed up front, that is okay then to retrade or renegotiate the price of the sale. Another thing you want to look at while you're under contract and really preferably before is your financing. The There's a few different options depending on the deal that you have, and I'm gonna break down each one. First is a hard money lender or a bridge lender. These are normally for acquisition and a quick refinance in about a year or two to get out of the loan. This is great for heavy value add, heavy reposition deals where you have to do a lot of renovations or rehab to the property. Another option is your local bank or credit union. If you have a smaller deal, which means under a loan amount of $1 million, then you want to go for a local bank or small credit union. That's what I did for my 14-unit apartment complex, as I bought it for only $630,000. I had a local credit union that financed the property at 80% loan to value. Now, if you get a larger property, which means the loan amount is over $1 million, you're always going to get the best rates in terms with agency debt. Agency debt is the multifamily loan products from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. However, there's a lot of red tape and requirements to qualify for these loans, but just keep in mind that they will give you the best interest rates and the best terms. The last option is a creative finance, either a sub-2, a loan assumption, or a seller carryback from the seller. This is more rare, but it is still doable. For local credit unions, normally their terms are 80% loan to purchase price, and then they give you a 5-year balloon. However, they amortize it over 25 years. Normally, their interest rate is prime plus 1%, and they only charge a 1% origination fee. They normally won't have any prepayment penalties, but they won't have any interest-only options. Once you get into agency debt, the terms are a lot better. They loan anywhere from 70 to 80% of loan to value, and their interest rates are normally a lot lower than what the market rate is. They amortize over 30 years instead of the 25 for credit unions, so you get better cash flow. Also, their loan terms are either a 5, 7, or 10-year term, so you have a longer time before the balloon hits. And a lot of times, they offer anywhere from 1 to 4 years of interest-only payments, which significantly boosts the cash-on-cash return, as you saw in the underwriting examples. However, they do have prepayment penalties, and they can sometimes be very expensive, so you want to make sure that you know your exit strategy before getting the loan. This is an example of a preliminary loan quote that I received for my 21-unit apartment complex when I was doing a cash-out refinance back in 2022. Also, for agency debt, they have a lot of requirements, and I'll attach a packet for the Freddie Mac small balance loan requirements, but some of the things to keep in mind are the net worth of all the sponsors on the deal have to equal the loan amount, they have to have a certain amount of liquidity to cover expenses, and they have to have experience, whether they signed on a Freddie Mac loan before and have owned or operated at least 3 multifamily properties. You can see the full list of requirements in the document I attached on this video, and definitely read through it and see that if you don't meet those requirements, try to find a partner that does and team up with them to get a deal done. Now, I mentioned bridge loans before. They're a great way to get some properties, and they lend about 70 to 80% of loan to value again, but they're always normally a 3-year term, all interest only, with 2 optional extensions. However, the extensions aren't guaranteed, as you have to hit certain criteria and there's fees to extend. So even though you have 2 separate 1-year extensions that are built into the loan, it's not a guarantee that you can get those extensions. So be a little careful with bridge loans, as with the interest rate rises, some people have been caught on bridge debt and they can't refinance out, and they're stuck in a bad situation with the property. Some stuff to always just have ready is your personal financial statement, your tax returns, your bank statements, and your LLC documents, just so that you can be prepared to give these items to the lenders to have a smoother process. Now, a bonus tip is supplemental loans. Those come into play after you already own the property and you've added enough value where there's a lot of equity sitting in the property. You can get a supplemental loan on top of your initial loan to really juice the cash on cash and IRR returns. That's a more complex topic, and we won't really talk about it in this course, but if it's something that you're interested in, Google and learn more about supplemental loans and how that can really improve your underwriting metrics. So a quick summary breakdown so far of the entire process is to 1, find deals, whether that be through a broker or off market. 2, analyze the deals and underwrite them. 3, make an offer with an LOI. 4, if accepted, make a PSA and get that executed for the contract. 5, start your due diligence and at the same time, get the lender involved to start the process for closing on the property. 6, create your LLC, open your bank accounts for the new property LLC during this due diligence period. 7, pitch to investors and raise money to be able to close on time. So that's the general walkthrough of the timeline for the process of closing a multifamily deal. Once you've closed on the deal, the work has really just begun. Operating the asset is key to making the money and getting the returns for your investors. It's broken down into 3 main components. The key is to have a strong property management team, because they're going to handle leasing, repairs and maintenance, marketing, and financials. So you want to make sure that the property management management team is a good fit for your property. If you have any CapEx projects planned, you want to normally do those first once you take over the property. And the order in which you do them is also very important. First and foremost, if there's any lender required repairs or insurance required repairs, you want to take care of those ASAP. So on my 32 unit apartment complex, I didn't have any lender required repairs from Freddie Mac, but the insurance had repairs that they required. They required one of the roofs to be redone, and they required for the potholes in the driveway and parking lot areas to be fixed. Now on my 21 unit, when I did the cash out refinance, Freddie Mac actually had some lender required repairs, and that focused more on the safety side of things, like electrical boxes that were old, etc. Once those are out of the way, you want to do all your exterior CapEx first. If there's any new signage, any exterior painting or landscaping, or adding any amenities. The reason for this is so that all the tenants can see that you're actually trying to improve the property, and that can justify a rent increase, or it could just make the property more attractive to want to possibly rent and live there. Some easy exterior upgrades that don't normally have to cost much is adding LED lighting, restriping the parking lot, getting a new sign, repainting any parts that look ugly, and just doing some general landscaping. Some easy interior upgrades is painting the walls a more modern color, putting modern fixtures in, such as new faucets, new light fixtures, new ceiling fans, or adding recessed lights, and putting in low flow faucets and shower heads to save on water. Now, when you're upgrading a unit, you want to aim for a 25 to 30% return or higher. That means if you can raise the rent of an apartment by $100 and it only costs you $4,000 to renovate it, then you want to do it, as your return on investment would be 30%. Now, some value add ideas that you can do for increasing the income of the property include charging a higher application fee, charging a pet fee or pet rent every month, doing RUBS or ratio utility bill back system. That's when if you pay the water or electricity or any utilities on the property as an owner, you can bill back the tenants a portion of that charge. This is a great way to cover most, if not all, of your utility costs, and therefore increasing your NOI on the property, raising the value of the apartment complex. Some other things to charge for is assigned parking, storage units, late fees, etc. Now, some value add opportunities on cutting expenses is your utilities. Make sure you have low flow showers, toilets, and faucets, as that really reduces the water bill and the amount of water used. Also, check your contracts. If you have a contract with a dumpster or waste company, try to negotiate for a lower rate or shop around. The same goes for pest control, landscaping, internet, laundry. All these things have competition in the space, and you can find and shop around for the best deal. But the biggest item that adds to your costs are turnovers. That's when a tenant moves out and you have to make ready the unit for a new tenant. This is the absolute killer of NOIs. You want to reduce turnovers as much as possible. You want to spend money to retain tenants, whether that's throwing events, gifts at Christmas, or anything like that, because having a turnover really costs a lot of money that most people don't realize. One, you're losing rent for several months at least. That could be several $1,000s right there. Two, you have to spend several $1,000s on the make ready. And three, when you lease up the new property, you're gonna have to give a lot of that lease up fee to the property management company. For example, if a tenant was paying $2,000 a month for a 2-bed, 2-bath unit, but it was a little bit outdated and it needs some work, but it could rent for maybe more, $2,500 when you're done, you still don't want them to leave, because it's gonna take you maybe a month to 2 months for the renovations, and then a month to 2 months to lease up the property. That's 4 months of rent that you lost, or $8,000. On top of that, you might spend $4,000 to $5,000 on the renovations. That's $13,000 right there. And then when you lease it up for $2,500, the property management company might take $500 to $1,000 for the lease up fees. So as you can see, that's a huge swing in the money, and although you recoup it in the long term, it's something you want to avoid, especially if you want to have a good NOI. Now let's talk about the tax benefits of investing in multifamily. One of the biggest draws to investors to invest in multifamily are the tax benefits. For example, you can do a cost segregation study and combine that with bonus depreciation to write off all your losses or the majority of it in year one. This can help people offset their ordinary income, which makes it a very attractive investment vehicle. Now, it gets very complicated, but basically a cost segregation study is when someone analyzes all the components of the apartment complex, from the floors to the appliances to everything, and they have it on a depreciation schedule at different times. This is how you can maximize your depreciation, and with the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, you can do 100% bonus depreciation up until 2022. And now it's being phased out every year until 2025. It's supposed to go away, but you can still get a lot of depreciation from the cost segregation study. This gives a lot more advantages than the traditional straight line depreciation by letting you offset more of your income with these passive losses. Also, for investors, since it's passive income, taxed at a more favorable rate, and it's taxed at long-term capital gains, so you have lower tax rates for all the income that they're making. However, as a GP or sponsor, there's something called carried interest, which means since you're actively participating and running the deal, you're actually taxed as ordinary income the first 3 years. So if you sell a syndication and go full cycle within 3 years, you're actually paying full ordinary income gains taxes, not long-term capital gains. So if you operate the property for more than 3 years, then you get dropped down to that favorable tax bracket. There's also other plenty of tax benefits like selling on a 1031 exchange, selling on a DST, or you can accept investors that are trying to 1031 sales of their own properties into your syndication through a TIC or a tenant in common. These are more advanced tax strategies that you can look into if it arises in your situation.